Welcome to the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture's Soybean Agricultural Sustainability Virtual Field Trip. I'm Jeremy Ross, soybean agronomist with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. We're happy that you're here to join us today to learn about why soybean sustainability is important for Arkansas and U.S. markets. This is our 12th virtual field trip in the Soil and Water Conservation Series. Today's program is funded by the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service and hosted by the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. One of the benefits of participating in a live virtual field trip is that you can submit your questions in the Q&A box. We'll answer as many questions as we can during our Q&A segment. Now, for our introduction, I will be discussing why sustainability is important for our soybean market, and this presentation will lay the foundation for today's discussion. So today we're going to be talking about sustainability in soybeans in Arkansas. If you look at the production in Arkansas, Arkansas has been producing soybeans since the 1920s. If you look at 2020, Arkansas ranked number 11 in the U.S. on soybean acreage planted and production. But if you look at the Mid-South states, we're ranked number 1. The 2020 planted acres was over 2.8 million acres in Arkansas with a value of $1.5 billion. And if we compare that to the other 3 big commodities that are grown in the state, corn, cotton, and rice, 2020 soybean production was bigger than those 3 commodities. Soybean production in Arkansas is pretty vital to the economy of Arkansas. So when we talk about sustainability, that phrase is used frequently in the agriculture industry, but it's not just a buzzword. In general terms, sustainability is a balance between the environmental aspects, social aspects, and economic aspects. And so to ensure that we get some of these sustainability components, number one, we have to ensure that it is going to be profitable and good production for the producers or the soybean growers. We need to be using our resources wisely to achieve environmental and conservation management goals. And then we also need to make sure that we're providing social and rural economics and make sure that it's viable in this entire system. So all 3 of those kind of play a part in soybean producers being sustainable, not only in Arkansas, but also across the U.S. So many of these production practices that farmers are implementing, the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture, scientists and faculty members are doing research on these practices. We're using those research findings to recommend these practices and provide the information to producers so they can implement these so that they can be profitable and be able to be a sustainable production throughout the growing season. Crop rotation is very important to sustainability. Farmers have known for years that growing different crops in different years increases the soil health, increases the yield for those commodities as they're grown in rotation compared to a monoculture or a crop that's grown year after year. And so rotation is very vital. In Arkansas, on the acreage that we have in Arkansas, soybean is grown in rotation with either corn or rice typically. We see benefits for not only the soybeans in this rotation, but also the other 2 commodities that are grown in this rotation. And the main reason is that we can see benefits from, again, increasing our soil health, by breaking disease cycles and insect cycles that we have if we had a monoculture or growing the same crop in the same field. And so we're able to rotate our pesticides, control those different pests throughout the season and for different years. But crop rotation is probably the key on being sustainable in soybean production. Cover crops have been a very good tool in sustainability, and we're seeing an increase again in that production practice over the last several years. We have numerous researchers looking at cover crops and the benefit of cover crops and how to manage those cover crops outside the commodity crop season, and then trying to manage that cover crop going into the cover or to the commodity crop season. And so with that research, we're able to give more and more information to producers on the use of these cover crops. We need to have this rotation and looking at cover crops for several years before we really see the substantial benefits of these. When we're talking about tillage, tillage has been a really probably the first sustainable practice that a lot of producers in the Midwest and here in the Mid-South have been looking at. That's either reduced tillage or no tillage in our systems. If we can look at conventional tillage, that's where farmers go out and till the fields, prepare the fields for planting, usually remove weed pressure and things like that. That's what we typically been considered conventional tillage. But the only problem with that is when we go out and till the ground is bare until the crop is grown. And so that leaves the soil and the fields at a potential a loss for either erosion or nutrient loss with heavy rains and things like that. So with the implementation of no-till and reduced till, what we do is actually leave the previous commodity debris on the field, and then we go in and on that undisturbed field we plant the seed. And so when we do that, we see a benefit. Again, we can retain soil moisture, we can retain the nutrients that are in the soil because we're not getting erosion during the off season with the removal of that previous debris, and we're also increasing our soil health. Nutrient management is really important when we're talking about sustainability. Arkansas soybean farmers routinely pull soil samples, send them into our diagnostic lab, soil lab, looking at nutrient availability. From those results, they then can get recommendations on what nutrients they need to apply, and applying the correct amount of nutrients and at the right application time, we can be very sustainable. As long as we're not over fertilizing and we're losing that fertility off the fields, we're seeing a benefit by using these practices. Integrated pest management, or IPM, is another important component of sustainability. This is actually going out and scouting fields, seeing what you have in your fields pest-wise, looking at insects, diseases, weed pressure, nutrient problems that you're seeing, and applying the proper product or application of a particular product at the right time to either control the pest or to give nutrients to that soybean plant. As opposed to just going out there and just blanket applying, fungicides and insecticides and different products, really not knowing exactly what you're targeting. So some of the aspects of integrated pest management, so a lot of the soybeans that are grown in the U.S. and in Arkansas are bred and have a gene that makes them tolerant or resistant to certain herbicides. The first herbicide-resistant varieties in soybeans were introduced in 1996. And ever since that introduction in 1996, actually the amount of herbicides that have been used in soybean production has declined. And so by using some of these breeding techniques and other things like that, we can breed for better varieties where for either disease resistance or nematode resistance or insect resistance or tolerance to herbicides. We can control those particular pests without having to use chemical or reduce chemical applications. Water management is very important here in Arkansas. 85% of the acreage in Arkansas is irrigated. So some of the things that our researchers and scientists have been looking at over the past few years is looking at surge valves and hole selector programs, which allow farmers to go out and regulate how much water is going across particular fields. farmers are implementing surface reservoirs, and we've seen more reservoirs constructed over the last several years, which are allowing these areas to capture more rainfall throughout the entire season, and then we're using that captured water to irrigate our fields. Farmers are using tailwater recovery systems, which is systems where they capture water that runs off fields after irrigation, and then we're able to reuse that particular irrigation water. So we're always looking at continuing improvement of these practices and looking at research and things like that through the university and through cooperations with other organizations. You know, if we look at long-term results of being sustainable, number one, you know, what we're trying to do is produce food, fiber, and fuel to produce an ever-growing population in the world. And so that's going to be the key for being sustainable, the number one key. The second and probably the next biggest is protecting the environment. We need to do everything we can to conserve our soils, our water, and our air. Because, you know, this is really all we've got. And so once soil leaves a field, we're not going to be able to replace that soil. And so we need to be really mindful of all of our being part of the environment and being a good steward of the environment. And then the last aspect is, you know, sustaining the economic viability of the agricultural system. And so hopefully I've given you some ideas of kind of how sustainability in Arkansas looks and some of the practices that we've been seeing. If you're a certified crop advisor or Arkansas teacher in need of CEUs or PDEs, we will be posting instructions for obtaining those at the closing of our credits. Next, Abby Rennie, Director for Sustainability with the U.S. Soybean Export Council, will give us information about sustainability in the U.S. Soybean Export Council.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today to speak about U.S. soy sustainability and the U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol. The U.S. Soybean Export Council was jointly established in 2005 by the American Soybean Association and the United Soybean Board to build upon 50 years of U.S. soy farmer international investments. Our purpose is to differentiate and create a preference for U.S. soy while ensuring market access. USEC is funded by the Soybean Checkoff and the USDA Foreign Ag Service. We operate in over 70 countries with approximately 130 staff and contractors. We have a membership of 104 exporters and allied industry class, plus our founding members ASA and USB. To give you a little information about the importance of the export market for U.S. soy, this graph shows the export use in the dark line and the domestic use represented by the orange line. To provide some simple math, around 60% of the U.S. soybean crop is exported. That's a lot of soybeans, and it's important to know who our customers are. You can see here the top 20 destination markets for U.S. soybeans, looking at data from September through February of the marketing year. The numbers in the boxes show the percentage change from the 16-17 marketing year compared to the 2021 marketing year, as well as total tonnage of U.S. soy imported into that country. The boxes in dark green show countries that have had over 100% growth. Lighter green have had a 10 to 100% growth. The olive green color, a 0 to 10% growth. And red boxes have had a negative growth by percentage, but are still in the top 20 markets by volume. Within the last 10 to 15 years, discussion about sustainability and sustainable sourcing was starting in Europe. Since then, we have seen sustainability become a point of discussion in nearly every market around the world. It's becoming a sourcing requirement for many brands. We have paid close attention and tried to understand what the issues are and how the U.S. soy industry can help solve problems and meet requirements. While attempting to answer questions from supply chains, we recognize the need to formalize our responses. The tool that was developed is the U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol, commonly called the SSAP. The SSAP catalogs the federal legal requirements farmers who participate in the U.S. Farm Program must meet, in addition to the state and local laws, as well as voluntary efforts made at the farm level. The SSAP looks at the U.S. soybean production in aggregate based on the level of participation in the U.S. Farm Program and the compliance rate from audits. So it's important to note that every farmer participating in the U.S. Farm Program provides certifications of compliance each year and are all subject to audit, and there are about 20,000 audits conducted annually. So based on U.S. soybean production, the farmer participation rate in the U.S. Farm Program, and the audit compliance rate, the amount of sustainable U.S. soy is calculated. And from that, there is the ability for exporters to provide certificates verifying the soy being purchased meets the SSAP. However, this is all just a moment in time. A very important aspect to SSAP, similar to U.S. agriculture, is the fact that we recognize sustainability is all about continuous improvement, and we must continue to find new ways to reduce our impact on the environment and at the same time remain economically viable and positively contributing to society's needs. The 4 directives of the SSAP cover biodiversity and high carbon stock. These are the regulatory obligations to maintain wetlands, grasslands, forests, and enhance biodiversity. Production practices. This includes those that enhance the environment as well as those that protect our natural resources while increasing production efficiency. Public and labor health and welfare. We have a number of regulations and laws that provide for the protection of the public and workers. So this is where we cover things like fair labor standards, equal employment opportunity, abolition of forced labor, and Clean Water Act laws. Finally, continuous improvement. Sustainability is not a result, it is a process. Each year, farmers work harder to be more efficient and environmentally sound. Along those lines, we've established some continuous improvement goals that I'll discuss in a few slides. There are several key metrics that help convey the story of U.S. soy sustainability. This slide shows several of the sustainable practices used by U.S. soybean farmers as they're continually working to improve their sustainability for the future. From this chart, produced from the Field to Market National Indicators Report, you can see that there have been continuous gains made by the soybean industry in the U.S. Every 5-year period, there was improvement, with the exception of the 5-year period from 2011 to 2015 related to irrigation water use. There are a number of factors at play related to irrigation water use. One is the 2012 drought, in which there was more irrigation used than normal. The Field to Market National Indicators Report is released every 5 years. We expect the 2020 version to be released in late fall of this year, which will provide us an update of how we are tracking, and we expect to see the same trends continuing. So this is a measurement of where we have been and where we are, but continuous improvement means we need to set goals of where we want to go. Based on the year 2000 Field to Market benchmark, U.S. soybean producers should be able to achieve these continuous improvement goals in the next 5 years. We should be able to increase yield by another 10% by improving the adoption of narrow rows and the use of cover crops. We should be able to reduce soil erosion an additional 25% by increasing adoption of no-till, conservation tillage, narrow rows, and cover crops. We should be able to increase energy use efficiency, a direct economic savings, by 10% by increasing adoption of no-till and conservation tillage practices, thereby reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 10%. We need to focus our limited resources in research, outreach, and measurements to make certain we are achieving our targeted goals. This is what sustainability is. It's all about continuous improvement. The next few slides really demonstrate the rise in the importance of sustainable sourcing. In 2014, when the SSAP was introduced, just 6,845 metric tons were shipped with an SSAP certificate. Through the beginning of May for this year, we have shipped 24.9 million metric tons of soy with an SSAP certificate accompanying the shipment. This slide shows SSAP shipments by region as a percentage of the total exports to that region. Usually the EU and Northeast Asia, which is Japan and South Korea, will end the year with close to 100% of their shipments using an SSAP certificate. Currently, 38% of the soy leaving the US is accompanied by an SSAP certificate. We can certainly verify more soy than that as sustainable, but that's the amount that is being requested at this point. The SSAP has been accepted by various groups around the world as a means of verifying sustainability. We are actively involved in groups like Field to Market, the Consumer Goods Forum, and others that promote sustainability to protect the earth and our ability to feed the growing population in the years to come. A few of the key achievements of SSAP are being positively benchmarked by FEFAC, the European Feed Manufacturers Federation, against their 2015 soy sourcing guidelines. It's recognized by the Tokyo Olympic Procurement Committee for the 2021 Olympics and is included in the Global Seafood Alliance Best Aquaculture Practices. Some companies are looking for the ability to further differentiate their products and highlight the sustainability of the soy they are purchasing. A trademark logo offers companies that use sustainable US soy in their products, verified through the SSAP, the opportunity to include the sustainable US soy logo on their packaging and marketing materials. The logo is currently being used by more than 30 companies on over 550 products as a way to differentiate their products that contain sustainable US soy. This picture shows a tofu package from Japan that includes the logo. Soy is receiving a lot of attention. Buyers are looking for verification of the sustainability of the soy they are purchasing. The U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol offers a U.S. origin traceback to the actual commodity being purchased. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Remember, you can enter your question in the Q&A box, and we will answer as many questions of them as we can live today toward the end of our broadcast. Next, Brad Doyle, farmer from Poinsett County and current Vice President of the American Soybean Association, will share information about sustainability and how the American Soybean Association plays a key role in helping our producers.
So the American Soybean Association is a policy organization, and part of our responsibility as farmers is to travel to DC and visit with our senators and congressmen and educate them about the importance of soybean and how sustainably produced it is in the United States. Protecting our right to farm is pretty easy when you have a crop that's sustainable as soybeans. It has an ultimate story on what it does for us. Most farmers' children see the soybeans enter a combine, grain cart, tractor trailer off the farm. They have no idea where it goes. It helps feed the world through poultry, swine, other livestock, aquaculture. There's so many choices to place soybean into an animal feed as well as human feed. So there are Asian countries that depend a lot on soybean through natto, tofu, the soy milk that they drink. So it is a great nutritional product. And to me, that's sustainability. That is something that we can continue to grow. We're growing more and more of it every year per acre. So that's more sustainable. So the American Soybean Association, through the organization USEC and USB, have an international program called SSAP, and that is the Sustainable Soybean Assurance Protocol. And what that is, provides documentation and record keeping of the soybeans that are produced in the United States for our foreign customers. If they buy soybeans with the SSAP certification, they can know that they were sustainably produced. And there are lists that we go through that qualify each grower. there is no incentive to the grower other than it's higher demand from the customer. And then that's what we want. That's why soybeans are a great fit. If we don't have demand here, we would try to choose a different crop that would be profitable on our farm. But soybeans are a great answer to that. Incentives to grow sustainable crops hopefully are coming. We have a lot of legislation that will occur in the next year or two. We are currently in discussion with many senators and congressmen in the United States, and there will be some programs available. Climate change policy, that's what we're going to hear a lot of here. And we're just working through the details, the opportunity for the grower. And we know here in Arkansas, our farmland is not like it is in Iowa or Minnesota or South Dakota. So we need to let them know what challenges we may have that they don't necessarily have up there, and vice versa. So it's communication with those lawmakers that will help the USDA, NRCS, other programs to come to your farm voluntarily. We don't want anything to be mandatory. We need to make sure they work, have the option to sign up in a timely manner if you qualify, and hopefully give feedback to the public. This is what we're doing to make our farmland safer, more environmentally friendly, and for sure to lock in food security for a long time. So the American Soybean Association is made up of 30 soybean growing states, and we have directors throughout those states. As a board, we travel to DC twice a year, but many other times as needed for issues that come up. And your membership helps pay for this. You are a member of Arkansas Soybean Association, you're a member of the American Soybean Association. That gives you a voice. We need to be in Washington, D.C., sitting down across from someone who's going to tell you what you can and can't do on your farm. And that's very, very important. Working with our state, we have great representation and relationships. But when I go to Virginia or Iowa or California even, they need to know too what's going on in our state, because they're going to eventually have a vote on issues that will affect us here in the state of Arkansas. We travel to DC, we set up appointments, we go from office to office. Representative may remain for 2 years, senator may remain for 6 or more, but their staff is ever changing. So the staff we visit with, we update them. And a lot of times in their off season, they come to Arkansas and they walk fields and farms. There's a great opportunity to show them hands-on what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we learned in the past, how we're doing it better. So all the advancements with genetics and implements, diesels, burning fuel or generating electricity to run your pumps or your dryers. All of this is an evolving energy demand that they need to know about. Solar, does the solar work for me? If I am nowhere near an electric grid, it may not. But these are things that we can develop in the future infrastructure if it makes sense. So part of the organization's responsibility too is to encourage new uses. Soybean oil was one of the original byproducts of soybean meal. So we crush it, we have all this oil. It is primarily used in vegetable oil, but advancements the last 20 or 30 years have come a long way, and soybean oil is in very high demand right now. With the biofuels market, the green energy movement, biodiesel has its place at the table. So much that petroleum companies are investing now. Our soybean prices are at a good level right now and can potentially go higher because of the demand of soybean oil. Biodiesel plants are increasing their capacity, their infrastructure, they're reinvesting, they're building new plants in some states. So this is huge from a soybean farmer's bottom line, hopefully, in the future. Higher demand, higher prices. But soybeans, there's over 8,000 products we can make with soybeans. So advancements in foam that are used in car dashes, plastic. Goodyear announced this week, I believe, that they're going to phase out petroleum in their tires. They're going to replace it with soybean oil. So it's renewable, it's sustainable, it makes sense. We could grow it right here at home, and we're really good at it. You farmers, consultants, extension, we do a great job communicating our failures, but more importantly, our successes. How can I do it better? We can all drive up and down the field and see fields of soybeans and how they're being grown, but sit down and talk about what gave me 10% more yield or 20% more yield on the same farmland. That is very valuable, especially to our foreign buyers and domestic large retail outlets when we talk about the sustainability story of soybean. So what can we do in the future to make sure that our farming livelihood remains intact? If legislation comes and we have to fix more carbon, we have to reduce our environmental footprint of what we are currently farming, are you ready? Are you ready to take out 5% of your production, 10% of your production, maybe on your marginal ground, on your lowest productive ground, increase your wetland size? There are some tools out there, some information. Buffer strips would be one. We know in Arkansas we have a lot of surface drainage. There's very little tiling in Arkansas, very little internal drainage of our soil, so that creates many challenges. But we can provide buffer strips or biofilters. We can use our flashboard riser pipes and slowly drain fields when we are seeing too much residue loss. So there are programs in place, but we know we need to do better. We need to bring new innovation, because when the legislature tells us that we have to do this by a certain date, we need to be prepared for it. And giving them, those in DC, our challenges, what we can do today, what we can do if you give me 2 years, and what we can do long term. I think that's going to be very vital for their direction, not forcing us to do something that we really are incapable of doing. We want to go to a more friendly path, more volunteer path, and say, hey, we can do this right now if you let us, work with us. So that's what the American Soybean Association is all about. As a membership-driven organization, it really matters. Your voice is heard. You stay in contact with our DC staff, with what is going on. They're voting in Washington, DC weekly, so we need to be there and tell them what challenges you have, what we have, what I have as a farmer, and how we can help reach those goals in the future with the new administration or with the next administration.
Thank you, Brad. Remember, you can enter your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll answer as many as we can live today. Next, Derek Hagewood, Director of United Soybean Board and a local soybean producer from Jackson County, will discuss sustainability practices he implements in his farming operation.
Thank you, Jeremy. Glad to have this opportunity to talk about farming here in Northeast Arkansas. When we talk about growing soybeans here, it's something that myself and my family have always taken very seriously. It's something that we are very passionate about, and something that I have seen is the ability for my family to continue to pass this farm down through the generations. I am growing crops on a farm that my grandfather had, my father has farmed, and I'm farming now, and my intention is to be able to pass this to my sons if they want the opportunity to farm. So when we talk about our production, the first thing that comes to mind is sustainability. And how can we do this? Not only things that are good for the ground, but things that also help us economically. We want to do this for a profit. And so we've incorporated, over the past few years, we continually try to find the edge. We want to move forward. We want to adapt new technology. We want to try new things. Some of those things that we've done and incorporated into our normal practices, we introduced cover crops, and we have tried to perfect a blend that works well for each type of soil that we're farming. We've incorporated furrow irrigation, 60-inch beds, 30H. We're trying to find out the best thing we can do. We've found that using row rice irrigation makes the next year farming soybeans much better. And that's something that we really focus on, is making sure we have the proper crop rotation for each year. And the row rice is another technology that makes us more sustainably, environmentally, and economically. So we're always looking for the new thing. We want to be the front runners or the forerunners of a new technology. We want to try these things if we can get an edge, and it's something that we're very passionate about here. Each year, we look at all the varieties that are available to grow. We try to spread out the maturity level. We grow anywhere from a 3.75 to a 5.0, and we try to pick the ground, choose the ground. Is it irrigated ground? And we pick our varieties based on that. We also alternate technology. We will plant a Liberty bean one year, and then when the rotation comes, we'll use a Roundup or an Enlist. We try to continually be conscious about what we're planting where, to help with one of the biggest problems that we have every year, especially here in Arkansas, is resistant weeds. And so these technologies are available, and we want to be a good steward of that technology, and we try to do everything we can to maximize that in our operation. We've gone as far as south of the highway is Liberty only, north of the highway is Roundup only, and then we rotate that. We switch it, and then that goes back to crop rotation. If we have ground that is good at growing rice, we'll pull that out. We'll put rice in that rotation where we could use more technology, where we can put out those pre-emerge rice herbicides and things like that to help keep our ground clean. When we talk about growing crops here in Northeast Arkansas, at the forefront of our mind, once we've got these varieties and things picked out, we don't make a good crop unless we can irrigate that. I've traveled around, I've spoke to international buyers, I've spoke to people like yourself, I've spoken to multiple groups of people from all lines of agriculture, from the end user to the producer, and most people are somewhat shocked when I tell them I spend more time irrigating my crop than I do planting and harvesting combined. We have hot, dry summers here, and that is our focus. We don't plant the field until the furrows are pulled properly, and we have to choose 60-inch beds. Do we levee water it, which we've almost completely gotten away from, and that's something that we are make or break on. We don't have a crop unless we can irrigate it properly. So what technologies can we use there? We've used pipe planter with the University of Arkansas. We've gone in, set up our fields. We make sure that we document what size holes we punched the year before. Did that work? We try to, all of us that irrigate, keep little notebooks. We make sure that we do it better every year. That is our goal. We want to do it, we want to spend less money, use less water, and make the most profit. And that's our goal, and that's every farmer's goal. So we document that as the best we can. We've introduced using surge valves, And we were one of the first around to try that. We had the opportunity to demo one on our farm, and we were amazed. On an 80-acre field, it saves 1 day per week in irrigation. And if you want to quantify sustainability and quantify using these technologies, that's something that is incredibly easy for anyone to notice. This 1 less day a week of fuel, 1 less day a week of spending time out there, making sure it's irrigating properly. And these are just some of the things that we've had the opportunity to take advantage of and to help us stay with our head above water. Soybean farmers have gone through some amazing times in the last 5 years alone. From the trade war with China, where soybean growers were the tip of the spear, where we saw prices crash around 25% less for a price of beans during that time. And look where we're at now. These prices are jumping up, then they're falling. So we have such uncertain markets right now. And so that helps us to focus on things we can control, like our irrigation and the technology we use. We introduced cover crops on our farm a few years ago, and each year we add more and more acreage. It's an expensive step to take to start out, but we definitely have found that it is beneficial to us. We've spent a lot of time and doing a lot of tests, perfecting the blend. And I can't say that we've found the perfect blend yet, but we get better every year. Certain types of soil, we've planted black oats. Certain types we use cereal rye. We throw a mixture of things in there, and we're just trying to find what helps us the most. And we have to spend a lot of time, really watching how does it plant if you put vetch in there? How does it plant if you put winter peas or 7-top turnips? We have to be able to plant through it well. We have to be able to see a benefit of one of the blends that we've used. I have seen a significant increase in some dry land yields. Like I said, the hot, dry summers, we really don't have much of a crop if we don't irrigate. Saying that, on our non-irrigated ground, which we have very little of, I've seen an increase of 11 bushels to acre in 5 years. It wasn't immediate. And so what's happening is that soil structure is getting better every year. We are keeping more of our topsoil. We're not working that topsoil, and it's not running off after large rains. It's staying intact. We're getting more and more organic matter. And when we do get those small rains or even large rains in June, July, August, that cover crop, that foundation that we laid back in the winter, helps to hold that moisture longer. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize in July, if you have dryland soybeans, if they can hold that water 1 more day, 2 more days, especially at the critical times when soybeans are blooming and putting on the pods, it's something that we've seen a benefit and something we continue to investigate and try to perfect that blend. And it's something that I can see that will be in our future for many, many years to come.
Thank you, Derek. We really appreciate the presentations from our speakers today. We are now ready to answer your questions, so please continue to enter your questions in the Q&A box. So we're going to start with our questions today. So the first question is probably could be addressed to Abby. Abby, the question is, what countries importing our soybeans are the most concerned about sustainable product or production?
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. So of the countries that are importing soybeans from the US, the countries that are really looking for sustainable verification are those countries in the EU, and then also Northeast Asia, so Japan and Korea. Those are the countries where it's really important for buyers to be able to demonstrate the sustainable production practices of the soybeans they're purchasing. So those are the areas that are really focusing on it right now, though we're seeing it spread to every other country that we work in. Southeast Asia, it's becoming more commonly used. The Americas, it's becoming more commonly used. So it's growing in popularity everywhere. But Europe and Northeast Asia are the primary countries where it's a requirement for those folks to demonstrate that sustainability.
All right, thanks, Abby. The next one probably be addressed either Brad or Derek. So the question is, what's your take on the crop support from the government? I'm assuming crop subsidies and things like that. So Brad, you want to start that one?
Yeah, great. So we're working on that, and it may be a per acre incentive, $20, $30, $40. We don't know yet, but it would be if you implement cover crops, if you implement no-till, if you're currently using tailwater recovery. So it is yet to be determined. You are going to have to show that you are using a practice that does meet a certain goal. And if it's carbon capture, that would be one. As you know, Arkansas has a great conservation story with migratory waterfowl. So conservation will be part of that discussion as well. But all of this is very fast paced right now. And we are discovering what's available and letting them know. It won't be a blanket check across the farm. Just because you farm in Arkansas, you're going to receive a check. You will have certain criteria to meet, and there will probably be a cap on that because it's all about where the funding comes from. And I believe the administration they want to do something to incentivize the farmer. That makes sense. And to Derek's point about, it's an expense to grow cover crops, so it may just be as simple as paying for the seed and the application cost.
All right, thanks, Brad. The next question, maybe Abby, maybe Derek, has the recent issues in China with the pigs and poultry made a difference in exports to that country? Derek, you want to?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that. When you talk about exporting for swine, the first thing I think of is China, and we, just a few years ago went through ASF, where there's massive loss of the swine herd, and that we saw that as growers on the end there, we saw a decrease in price because there was a decrease in demand and a decrease in consumption there in the largest country in the world as far as pork production. So yeah, that is, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get back to the grower, but ultimately we are affected by everything. It just takes a little bit longer. It's we don't control our input costs, and we don't control the price we sell at. And so the vulnerability there, when I hear Brad, I'm so thankful we have people like Brad there standing up for us in DC, and ASA does an amazing job doing that. But it's, the industry is incredibly important, and we are so susceptible to the things I just mentioned, as well as the weather. And we've seen that across the country this year with drought and floods and all these things. So doing this job, it's what I was made to do, and it's important. But wow, sometimes you just scratch your head and wonder why you're doing this, because of all these things we're talking about. So yeah, that does come back, and all we can do is hope for continued high demand, especially from China, and go from there. And when we talk about getting our products into these countries, we have people like Abby who day and night, her and Rosalique, they fight for market access and showing that our products are safe for poultry consumption and human consumption and all these different things. This soy family that we have is turned into an amazing thing over the past few years, where we have USB, ASA, and USEC fighting for farmers and investing in all these technologies, and it's come together quite nicely, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And sometimes I wish I didn't know as much as I did, and Brad, I know you know that, but it's because it makes it hard to sleep at night, but it's you just kind of close one eye and go through with the best you can. But I'll turn it back over to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Derek. Abby, this one may go to you. How many of the countries we export to have concerns about our GMO soybeans? In other words, do some countries prefer non-GMO versus GMO?
Yeah, there are some countries that do prefer non-GMO, and those are particularly Northeast Asia. So Japan is the largest importer of non-GM, followed by Korea. And those beans are primarily, well, they're completely used for food products in those countries.
All right, thanks. Next one, probably Brad, you might want to take this one. Have you noticed any carbon recovery credits yet in this business? So I know there's been a lot of talk on carbon credits in agriculture. So Brad, what's ASA doing on working on carbon credits?
So there's very limited information out there on who is actually getting carbon dollars. There was some pilot projects a few years back with Microsoft, with rice, and it did not take off from there. It was a 1-year deal. I believe Indigo Ag is working with Anheuser-Busch right now on some rice. But as far as I know, speaking with Senator John Bozeman, we are assuming about a half a ton of carbon captured per acre, and that's worth about $11 an acre. So no one's jumping at $11 right now. We know that it needs to be higher than that to grab acres, to encourage or entice farmers to do that. So nothing solid right now. I think it's a lot of discussion, and we're going to need some private industry, if they want to step in and have those programs. That's great. There are some regional programs. I believe Kansas City area has one for some cereal grains that are taking in. So you could do it regionally if you wanted to, but right now there's very few options. There's a lot of ideas and where that money is going to come from. So all in great discussion, and 2 months from now we'll know a whole lot more than we do today.
All right, thanks, Brad. We've had a couple of questions about the aquifers and the water levels in the state. This one was actually kind of directed toward Derek. Derek, the water table appears to be dropping in some parts of Arkansas. How concerned are you about this problem in Jackson County?
In Jackson County, we're not concerned at all. Actually pulled a well that was malfunctioning just a few weeks ago. Water table was 13 feet. Most of our wells, my deepest well is 91 foot. So I know, you get close to the Grand Prairie and around Stuttgart area, they're having some issues. Where Brad and I are, pretty abundant supply of water. I can get a well, a really good well, 2,000 gallon a minute well, just about anywhere I want to put one down. So in Jackson County, not a concern at all. And I know my cost to put in a well is maybe a tenth of what they're putting a well down in Stuttgart and the Grand Prairie, but so not a concern at all for me.
yeah, I know if you're around, certain rivers, the water level is actually pretty low, and really get away from those rivers, it starts to decline pretty much. Um, so I guess I don't know if anybody can take this question. I may be able to probably answer this one. But edamame is relatively new in the soybean growing scene. Is there any export of this commodity? And if so, has it shown an increase? And I know that the local company here in Arkansas, they're really wanting to export more, but it's just, trying to get it processed and things like that. And they're just having trouble getting that. I think most of it is, retained here in the state or in the US. But Abby, do y'all have any numbers on edamame exported to other countries?
No, actually, I don't. That's not something that we have tracked yet. I haven't seen it come up in conversation, but certainly something we'll keep an eye on.
Jeremy, if I may, so there's two things to edamame, right? You actually have the dry planting seed of edamame that could be exported, but the fresh, actually edamame, that's where the challenge is, that it's a fresh ship product. And I have seen in U.S. grocery stores Chinese grown edamame that was frozen. So to my knowledge, that's the only fresh market that's available, would be flash frozen in grocery stores.
All right. Another question, and anyone can probably answer this one, but how does the U.S. soybean production compare to other countries when we're looking at sustainability and sustainability practices? I know Derek and Brad, y'all have traveled in some of these other countries. How does the U.S. compare to some of these other countries?
Jeremy, when we set the bar so high, it's not even really funny. We have the EU in their soy production without the use of these chemicals and technologies, and therefore they are not sustainable. And I go out on a limb, and everybody kind of cringes when I say that, but if you're not using GMOs, if you're not using the technology that the American farmer is using, your sustainability starts to drop. You can do these things sustainably, but overall as a country, we blow everyone out of the water. The problem we're having is countries saying that they want sustainably produced soy, yet they're buying other countries of origins. They want sustainability, but they're not willing to pay for it, and they're buying strictly on price. And they look at the U.S. to be a leader in sustainability, and look the other way at other countries of origin. And it's, as a farmer, it's frustrating, and we're trying to figure out how to, open or shine a light on this in a tactful way. And you can tell by me, just a Jackson County farmer, that I don't have a lot of tact when it comes to that, because I've spent 8 years of my life sitting in board meetings and traveling around the world, talking about what we have, yet still look at the purchase numbers where there's countries buying strictly on price.
Thanks, Derek.
Jeremy, could I add to that real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have done some comparison against South American soybeans and also some European growing countries. And as Derek mentioned, US really blows the competition away, particularly for South America when you factor in their land use change. So over the past 20 years, there's been significant land use change that factors into their carbon footprint. So that's something that we're working on to convey that message internationally. But American really is, US source soy is really the sustainable source for carbon footprint.
Thanks, Abby. Well, everyone, wanted to thank you very much for joining us today for our soybean agricultural sustainability virtual field trip. I want to thank the NRCS for funding this broadcast, which was produced by the University of Arkansas System Division of Agricultural Cooperative Extension Service. We hope you enjoyed our presentations. To find out more about our soil and water conservation virtual field trips, you can visit our website at uaex.uada.edu.
Thank you for joining us for the Soil and Water Conservation Virtual Field Trip. This broadcast is funded by NRCS and produced by the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. To find out more about soil and water conservation, visit uaex.edu.